Notre Dame, the circuit named in honour of the great Gilles Villeneuve, is bathed in warm Montreal sunshine. And we're about to reach the halfway point of this Formula One season with the Canadian Grand Prix. Commentary from Martin Brundle and James Allen.
Thank you, Steve. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Montreal. Well, as Steve was saying, the Canadian Grand Prix is always a special date on the Formula One calendar. It's a beautiful setting. The weather is dazzling. And the track, well, it has a habit of delivering exciting races, as we've heard. This is a circuit which defies predictions. Only once in the last 6 years has the pole sitter gone on to win the race. And for the last 2 years, the winner has come from outside the top 5 on the grid. Well, Renault may have annexed the front row here yesterday in qualifying thanks to a raft of aerodynamic changes on their car, but this is their bogey circuit. Both of the cars have retired here for the last 2 years, and I wonder, can they turn that around today? Certainly on the face of it, it looks like an in-house battle between Alonso and Fisichella, and it was interesting yesterday, at the end of qualifying, Alonso felt the need to go out and do an extra run at the very end of the qualifying session. The track had got faster. He used up a new set of tyres to do it, but he felt a threat, and a real threat, from his teammate Fisichella. McLaren looked sharper this weekend. Kimi Raikkonen has qualified in the top 3 for the 3rd race in a row, and they look like they're building a bit of momentum here this weekend. BMW Williams the subject of a great deal of controversy. That rear wing there, the whole saga of the flexi wing continues. We've had clarifications. They have to have space, as you can see there, the thing that's holding that central vertical bit on the wing. Everybody has to put that on, but everybody trying to improve their straight line speed, and flexibility in the rear wing allows the car to travel a little bit faster in a straight line. It's a saga, I think, that's going to run for the rest of the season, because having cut 200 horsepower out of the engines with the switch from V10 down to V8, everybody just wants to go faster in a straight line, and they're coming up with some very, very clever ways of doing that. Well, there's the starting grid. You can see that Trulli is in front of Michael Schumacher, and that could be quite important here this afternoon. We think that Schumacher has got a few more laps of fuel in his car than the people in front of him, but he has been struggling this weekend to get the Bridgestone tyres to work. Trulli, the fastest Bridgestone qualifier then, he's gone for the softer tyre, as has Rosberg on the Bridgestone, but Michael Schumacher and Massa went for the harder tyre. So it'll be interesting to see how they perform over the course of the season. Button there solidly back in the top 10 after the disasters of Silverstone a fortnight ago with his teammate Barrichello as well. Villeneuve and Heidfeld were both extremely fast in free practice, but they got it wrong yesterday in qualifying, which is why they're just outside the top 10. So watch out for them this afternoon. Their pace is pretty special. And poor old David Coulthard there at the back of the grid has engine penalty, and that drops into the back of the grid. Amazingly though, Martin, if you look at Albers and Montero, there they are. They've got 16 cars between themselves and the pace setter Alonso, and the difference between them in the qualifying lap was 2 seconds.
Hey Steph, is my engine nice and cold or what? Yeah, Cosworth is looking after them quite well. They're all smiling, so must be cold enough. I'm just saying, when I come off the track and we start going over the days and I find out that Tonio's engine's 5 degrees cooler than mine again, someone's head's gonna roll.
I bet he doesn't know he's broadcasting that one to the world.
I bet he does.
But he's talking about differences between the cooling of the cars and how the engine covers fit and the vents that are in them, and it surprises me that his mind is on that one at the moment. But I wonder if he was confusing his engine with a vodka and Red Bull or whatever he likes to drink, because there's not a lot he can do about, or anybody else can do about, the absolute temperature of that engine. Now it's all over in that respect. The cars are going to do and be what they are. But there's a man who could play a big part in today's race, Jarno Trulli, and can very much interfere with the Ferrari progress of Michael Schumacher. Schumacher will be absolutely desperate to pass him at some point in the first lap.
There's young Nico Rosberg. Said you need to be a bit egotistical in this business, and I think a lot of people in the paddock would agree with that. Certainly his teammate Mark Webber, well bent out of shape by being blocked by young Rosberg yesterday in qualifying.
I said to David Coulthard, why don't you start in the pit? So much aggravation in the first couple of corners, but apparently here they don't release you from the pit lane, because the pit lane enters the track at turn 2, not turn 1. They don't release you out of the pit lane until all of the cars have cleared turn 2, so it's even more of a penalty than normal.
Everyone going away then on their formation lap. Really good crowd here, knowledgeable, enthusiastic, and a crowd that still really gets the romance of Formula One, thanks to the heritage of the great Gilles Villeneuve, after whom this circuit is named. So Alonso is going to lead the World Championship, as you can see, whatever happens coming away from this Grand Prix. But that 23-point margin that Schumacher has to him, really these two North American races, absolutely vital if Schumacher is to mount a championship charge in the second half of the season. Ferrari have got some momentum. They've got a new engine here this weekend, aerodynamic upgrades as well. Renault just trying to always keep themselves out of reach, but I fancy that this afternoon the track is going to come towards Michael Schumacher and Ferrari, a little bit like it did in Monaco. If you remember that stunning drive Schumacher put in on a very hot afternoon in Monaco, and from the back of the grid, I fancy it might be a little bit like that today. He's certainly a contender for a podium, and if anything happens to these Renaults on this their bogey circuit, then he and Kimi Raikkonen waiting to pounce. But it's hard to imagine how Schumacher could have a better second half to the season than the one Alonso's had in the first half. He's only dropped 6 points so far, so a good result here and Indianapolis next Sunday, and Alonso really is looking pretty much home and dry in the championship, barring any big mechanical retirements.
Everybody recovering to the pit lane. Of course, if there's an aborted start, they've all got to rush straight back out there again. It's quite a drama getting all of that equipment I was showing you on the grid on and off the racetrack, but they all need to be well clear, of course. Right, you ugly lot, we need a good, clean start. We do not want this Grand Prix being extended and getting messed about by football matches later on. We need this lot to be exemplary in the way that they drive the first lap, and then we want to see some good hard action, plenty of overtaking.
Well, it's certainly a track where you get a lot of events. There's lined by walls. That's one of the main reasons the driver make a mistake, unlike a lot of these new circuits where they fly off into an endless amount of runoff area. Here, you hit a wall if you make a mistake, and there are quite a few parts of this circuit where it takes a while to recover the damaged car, and really the only safe way of doing that is for the race director to deploy the safety car to slow the field down while the cranes come in and hoist the cars out of the way. For that reason, we have had 5 safety cars in the last 7 years here in Montreal. Let's hope we don't get any today. Let's have a nice clean race, as Martin says.
Oh, a long gap behind Trulli there. Michael Schumacher backing the pack up a lot, trying to give himself a bit more tyre temperature in those Bridgestones. That's a canny move.
Also allowing, of course, the Renault engine to get hotter and hotter and hotter, just sitting there for what is going to be a very long time. We are overlooking the final chicane at the back of the pit straight, and the final car's Coulthard has only just gone past us, so there's at least another 10 or 15 seconds to go before the final car's back up. Pat Simmons there on the right, in charge of the technical side of operations at Renault, looking a little concerned as the temperatures go up and up in those Renault engines. They've been waiting a long time now.
Nightmare time for all of the engine engineers.
70 laps of this race then. It's going to be very tough on the brakes, tough on the drivers. It's baking hot here in Montreal, and we're getting underway. Right now, a little move there by Fisichella, possibly a jump start. And anyway, he had to hit the brakes and Raikkonen jumped him. A little bit too impatient then on the getaway for Giancarlo Fisichella. Trulli is into 4th place, but Raikkonen up into 2nd. Michael Schumacher has lost a place to Rosberg, and he might lose another one to Montoya. Side by side, wheel to wheel, the 3 of them down to turn 3. Rosberg goes through. Still Montoya and Schumacher are side by side. Who comes out in front? It's Montoya.
Michael surely had to go along the grass, because he locked his brakes, trying to go around the outside of Montoya. So the canny move to back the pack up didn't give him any advantage, had a nightmare of a start. But I'm expecting that Fisichella might be penalised. He definitely jumped the lights. Although the car was stationary, it doesn't really matter. If you move before those lights, it's game over for a jump start.
It was a fractional movement. Look at Raikkonen attacking Alonso at the front. Alonso leads, Raikkonen 2nd. Fisichella 3rd, Trulli 4th, Rosberg 5th. Bit of a spinner there. Who was out of the hairpin?
Yeah, somebody looking as if he was turning completely the wrong way when he got hot on the brakes into the hairpin. We'll flash back to that. I wonder if Raikkonen would be close enough to have a look at Alonso into the final chicane, but he doesn't. And Rosberg, Nico Rosberg there, jumps through the chicane. Will not be penalised for that, but he may well have Montoya passing him down into turn 1, and his penalty will be taken that way. But he didn't gain or lose a position and he's managed to keep it all together. So a hot moment for a young head, but then he collected himself nicely. But now Montoya at the inside, surely he's got the right line, and there's no point, Nico, trying to do that. There was absolutely no point, and you'd lost the corner, and now you're both out of the race.
Oh, that was so unfortunate. Side by side, you could tell from Montoya. I was talking about safety cars and walls. Well, he's shaking his head. I think everybody's shaking their head at that one. Safety car standing by. I'm sure that Charlie Whiting will deploy it. That is one of the Midlands. Both of the Midlands, Montero and Albers, seem to... I don't know if they've made contact with each other. Safety car is being deployed. But the two Midlands were the cars we saw having problems at the hairpin on the opening lap. And there is Nico Rosberg. His second best performance in Formula One in qualifying yesterday, but certainly not his best performance on the opening laps of a Grand Prix here this afternoon. A new nose cone standing by for Juan Montoya.
Yeah, Montoya obviously carried on, but let's see how much damage. His suspension would have taken quite a knock there. But Nico very much had to recognise he'd lost that corner. So under safety car conditions, Alonso leads the race.
Welcome back to Montreal. This is lap 4 of the Canadian Grand Prix. The safety car has just pulled into the pit lane. Alonso is leading this race from Raikkonen. Montagny, you can see there, has just pulled off the racetrack. Montoya has come into the pits for a new nose cone. Nico Rosberg is already out of this race. He's collided with Montoya in the opening stages of this Grand Prix at a difficult place. Brought out the safety car while the marshals got the car away from that awkward position. That's now clear, and we are now racing with Alonso in front of Kimi Raikkonen, who jumped Giancarlo Fisichella at the start, but the stewards have told us that jump start that Martin and I both thought we saw was in fact, they're looking at it too, and we've seen a replay of it, and it clearly did get moving before the lights went out. So we expect a penalty for Giancarlo Fisichella for jumping the start. So all the good work he did, getting himself up to the front of the grid, seems to have been undone. This is Juan Montoya cutting his way through the field. He's now into 18th place, and that's David Coulthard in front of us. Ted Kravitz.
Yeah, and it looks like the Renault pit wall are expecting a penalty as well. They're not looking very happy about that. But Fisichella's only got himself to blame. But on Montoya, James, he did take on about 3-4 seconds of fuel. So that will see him up to about lap 35-40, which is about well into the one-stop territory.
Okay, the Colombian Montoya recovering there, having pitted for a new nose and a good look around the suspension after that collision with Nico Rosberg, but there was a yellow flag waving down into turn 14 where he just overtook Coulthard. So I don't know whether he got the move clear before he got to the yellow flag zone, but it was extremely close. So we'll watch out for that. But I'm absolutely sure now that Fisichella will take a penalty. But that's working out beautifully for Michael Schumacher, because Rosberg was ahead of him, as was Montoya, and as is Fisichella. So having had a dismal start, Michael's going to find himself moving forward quite quickly, at least up to the gearbox of this Toyota of Jarno Trulli.
Yeah, Michael Schumacher lost 2 places at the start to Rosberg and Juan Montoya, but they took each other out down at turn 3. He is sitting behind Jarno Trulli then, some 4.5 seconds behind race leader Fernando Alonso. Well, Montoya, we've been hearing about from Ted Kravitz about the strategy going one stop. Don't forget, here last year, Rubens Barrichello started from the pit lane and he got a podium on a one-stop strategy, so it can be done, and McLaren have done exactly the right thing for him. Let's hear now about the Midland situation. We saw the two cars getting, did they tangle with each other? We're not sure. Let's find out if they did from Louise Goodman, who's with Sporting Director of Midland, Johnny Herbert.
Well, let's just put exactly that question to Johnny. What's happened? Have your guys tangled with each other?
It's difficult to say. The only shot we got was probably what you guys saw, and it just, you could see that I think Christian was stopped, then you just saw Thiago pulling away, but it's difficult to know if they've come involved with something else and then just collected each other afterwards. It's very difficult to know. I'm going to find out.
Is that the politically correct answer?
No, I don't actually know at the moment. I haven't had time to get over there.
Thiago's been into the pits. What did you have to do to his car?
No, exactly. Well, that's why I haven't had time to get over there. But it was just basically he'd had a nose damage, so I had to change the nose. I think it was a little bit of a winglet on the side pod, but that had to take off and new tyres, and he's back out again.
Thanks, Johnny.
Yeah, well, we're watching, here is that replay. What happens? Yeah, one very much gets into the other. The teams, as we do, watch the world feed. So on the pit wall, they're only seeing exactly what we're seeing, but clearly, and Michael Schumacher has a bit of a sneaky look, but nowhere near close enough for pass, and Jarno Trulli's got to get past, and they're losing 1.5 seconds a lap to the leaders. And it's exactly as we expected, that Michael's race is being compromised by Trulli's pace. But I'm looking more and more at that Montoya Nico Rosberg. I mean, Nico was definitely ahead of him, but if you notice, when Montoya passed Michael in this corner on the first lap, Michael conceded in the end and went across the grass, and that's what Nico should have done. By turning in, he was guaranteeing an accident. Whose ever fault it was, he was guaranteeing an accident.
Well, it was great to see that replay again of Montoya and Michael Schumacher. They've had a few scraps over the years, and how close were their wheels to each other. Two high quality professionals managing to get through that corner without hitting each other, and it's not a slow corner either. They've been doing about 85 miles an hour with their wheels no more than a cigarette paper apart. Mark Webber has made up 6 places at the start. You can see quite a few people have gained. Villeneuve is up into the points from 11th on the grid. Watch out for those BMWs. They were very quick in practice. Just to bring you up to date with a couple of other matters, we have been notified of a drive-through penalty for car number 2, Giancarlo Fisichella. He may well take it now. In fact, he does. Into the pits he comes, and that's for jumping the start.
He's got 3 complete laps before he has to serve that, and he would want to go as far as he could, because his pace means he may well not come out absolutely low. He wanted to. So where's he going to feed back out? In front of Button, by the looks of it. So Fisichella will feed back out in 5th place.
Yeah, there was a 4.5 second gap between Michael Schumacher, who's just gone through the frame, and Jenson Button, and Fisichella has fed back into that in 5th place. So that's another place gain for Michael Schumacher.
That works though, doesn't it? He clearly jumped the start, and so he's had a penalty as such without absolutely wrecking the rest of the afternoon. So Fisichella back in play with a fast car underneath him. A race victory will now depend on a major problem for Alonso or Raikkonen, but he can still get on the podium from there. That's going to be interesting to watch.
Well, this year, for the first time, Formula One has a permanent steward who goes to every single race. The idea being to provide consistency in the decision-making process for these kind of penalties. Tony Scott Andrews, an English lawyer, is that man, and so far you'd have to say a reasonably steady hand on the tiller. Some good decisions been made, particularly the Schumacher incident in Monaco. The punishment certainly fitted the crime for Schumacher parking out in qualifying. Alonso leading the race then. Raikkonen, the fastest man on the racetrack that last time through, though. He's not letting Alonso get away. Trulli is 3rd. Michael Schumacher is 4th. 5th is Fisichella. 6th, Jenson Button. 7th, Jacques Villeneuve. 8th, Felipe Massa. 9th, Heidfeld, and 10th, Webber.
Right, Michael there twiddling the knobs on the steering wheel. That's the 2nd time. I suspect he's been told, turn up the mixture, turn up the revs. You've got to pass that Toyota.
Certainly looks like it. At the moment, he is losing ground. He's almost 10 seconds now behind the race leader, Fernando Alonso. Well, 70 laps of this racetrack are murder on the brakes of these Formula One cars. There are 5 places on this circuit where they have to stop from over 175 miles an hour, and one place where they stop from over 200 miles an hour. That's into the final chicane. And when they do that, the brake discs heat up to a temperature of 950 degrees centigrade. That's one of the places here, into the hairpin. 950 degrees centigrade. And to give you some sort of idea of reference, a pizza oven runs at about 300 centigrade, and a volcano erupts at just over 1,000 degrees centigrade. So it's not much less than the temperature of an erupting volcano. And well, it's a big ask on the brake discs to make it round 70 laps of this place.
Raikkonen, a new fastest lap of the race on a 1:16.8, just shavings and fractions faster than Alonso, who continues to lead. But they've got a 9.6 second gap now back to Jarno Trulli in 3rd place. Michael Schumacher in very close company for 4th, and that is Montoya scrabbling across, and he'll have to let Ralf Schumacher back in. If he passed Schumacher at the chicane, he'll have to let him back pass through, and he has done, and then have another go at him. So what an eventful afternoon for both the Colombian Montoya and Coulthard. Coulthard's had a difficult weekend with all sorts of problems on the Red Bull, and then they found an engine problem very late in the morning, so he had to start from the very back, and those two struggling down there in 16th and 17th.
Well, Juan Montoya knows all about trouble and strife here in Montreal. If you recall last year's race, he had a great opportunity to win it, and a safety car was deployed. McLaren brought his teammate Raikkonen, who was behind him on the racetrack at the time. They brought him in first, and it completely compromised Montoya's afternoon. He had to pit when the pit lane exit was closed. It was red light. Montoya just got the red mist and just drove straight out and completely ignored the red light, so of course was disqualified. And the year before that with Williams, he was disqualified for illegal brake ducts. So he's had a miserable time in the last couple of years here in Montreal, despite being enormously quick here.
seem to be his kind of place. And he really does need, Michael Schumacher really does need to clear the sister car of this Toyota Jarno Trulli, just as Montoya needs to clear Ralph. So poor pace for the Toyota. We'll see how much fuel they've got on. Maybe they're going quite long. What else is going on? We've got Villeneuve up in 7th place. He started 11th. I wouldn't be at all surprised he's not trying an unusual strategy this afternoon, Jacques Villeneuve, so we'll watch out for him as the race unfolds. But Raikkonen's got the gap down now to Alonso to just 0.6 of a second, and he's consistently faster around the laps, and that's the net result down at the hairpin.
Yeah, the two front cars right together on the racetrack. And you're right about the situation for Villeneuve. Because he qualified outside the top 10, he can specify whatever fuel load he wants to start this Grand Prix. Obviously, the top 10 runners had to carry their first stint race fuel in qualifying yesterday, so they won't want to have carried too much, whereas Villeneuve probably can go quite a few laps longer than the cars in front of him. So he is looking very good indeed, certainly with regards to the cars he's racing against this afternoon, particularly Button in 6th place. Ted Kravitz, what can you tell us?
Fisichella is going to be able to make the podium, we would have thought, or certainly make up for that drive-through penalty, James, because he's just crossed the line and what's he doing, 17.6, and Michael and Trulli have managed to up the pace, but I think they're going to have to take a long-term view on this Renault, because you can't overtake here really unless you're much faster. So I think Fisichella's going to have to wait for the stops before he try and overtake Michael and Trulli.
Thank you for that, Ted. And Juan Montoya has now got past, while Ted was talking to us, the Toyota of Ralf Schumacher. So Montoya moves up into 15th place now. David Coulthard behind him, 17th, having started from the back of the grid following an engine change. Alonso leading then on lap 12, just 0.6 of a second the margin to Raikkonen, and it's really very close between these two. This is the race we didn't get at Silverstone in a way, and we were certainly expecting it, the McLaren to be on form. Here is Raikkonen lining up Alonso here down the back straight. Is he going to go for a pass? He looks at it, down the outside. Alonso takes the inside line.
Yeah, we've seen how quick Montoya is down the straight in the sister McLaren, and so then is Kimi Raikkonen. He should get a better run off the corner, but doesn't. But that's going to happen, isn't it? That pass is going to happen. He's got so much more speed down the straight, and Alonso unusually under pressure. Gap down to 0.2 of a second, and it looks like Raikkonen's got a solid 4 or 5 kilometers per hour, 3 miles an hour, plus of course the toe. And it's a long straight. It's a 1 kilometer straight, and plenty of chance to get in the big hole in the air, the big vacuum in the air that Alonso's Renault is making as it pushes the air aside. The drag that comes off the back of his car creates a very nice suction to give you a bit of a slipstream. Barrichello pits for Honda from what was 13th place.
So he was one of the top 10 qualifiers, Rubens Barrichello. Started this race from 9th on the grid, and he did it by running quite a light fuel load, 13 laps of fuel. So to see whether he 3 stops here this afternoon. But look at this, the 2 contenders for last year's World Championship, Kimi Raikkonen and Fernando Alonso. Raikkonen quite a long way off in the points this year, almost out of contention, but he's got nothing to lose here in Montreal, and this is where he got very close to Alonso last time, not so close this time.
He was a little bit further away at the hairpin. I don't know if they've got a push-to-pass button effectively, or whether they need to dial up the extra revs on the steering wheel, or whether they've got like an easy fix when you think, okay, I've got to, here's my chance, now let's have the extra revs. You don't want to be suddenly realising you've got enough pace to overtake him, then have to start looking at the steering wheel to find a few more revs. Barrichello clearly out of the race for Honda.
Yeah, Rubens Barrichello, that is the reason for the early pit stop, and that's the first time this season that Rubens Barrichello has retired from a race. Only he and Alonso had done every single Grand Prix distance. So now Alonso the only man so far. Will he make it to the end of lap 70? He's certainly soaking up a great deal of pressure from Kimi Raikkonen. And well, a reminder for those of you following the World Cup that here on ITV, following this Grand Prix, you can see Portugal versus Holland, 8 o'clock here on ITV1. The winner of that game will play England in the quarter-finals of the World Cup. What a fantastic tournament that is turning out to be. Oh, Montoya's out! Has he hit the wall? Look at the right rear corner, the right rear tyre.
Either it's damage from the incident, but I don't think so. I suspect he's whacked the champion's wall at the top of the hill. The heat haze rising about the same pace as Montoya wanting to get out of that car. Everything is so hot. All of the bodywork of the car follows the contours of the mechanicals so closely. There's no space at all in there, and suddenly the heat just wells up in the car. Did he hit the wall or not, or was that after the incident? I'd be surprised if it's after the incident with Nico Rosberg, because it was the other side of the car, but we'll have a look. Barrichello, I was looking at the wonderful statistics we get through for every race, James. It's 23, he's finished the last 23 Grand Prix, Barrichello. And
predictably enough, Montoya hits the wall of champions. Luckily for us, he doesn't stop there and bring out another safety car. He manages to continue down the main straight to a place where he can safely park it. But 3 visits then to Montreal in the last 3 years, and 3 non-finishes for one Pablo Montoya. He joins Rubens Barrichello, Montagny, Rosberg and Albers as retirements already, and this is only lap 15.
I'll tell you something significant. Montoya's trying to keep a job at McLaren and trying to find a job elsewhere if not, and struggling at the moment, floundering around a little bit, so mistakes like that are not helping his cause whatsoever.
Yes, it's interesting. Interesting to see a show of hands of all of you sitting at home watching Formula One who've enjoyed it with us for many years, since Montoya came into the sport in 2001. A show of hands, how many would miss Juan Montoya if he wasn't an F1 driver next year? Because the way things look at the moment, it is a possibility that he'll have to look elsewhere for employment.
Christian Klein, who's in 11, having a look at the back of Mark Webber's Williams. Klein had a solid weekend, actually, driven very nicely indeed. Alonso's lead back up to 0.6 of a second now, and he's beginning to put a little bit of pace into his laps. Trulli's 13.6 seconds behind. Michael Schumacher still very much tucked up behind him.
Webber pits then. 10th place Mark Webber, that's quite early considering he started well outside the top 10. He's trying something on the strategy possibly, or maybe he's got some problems. But, well, the pace of the 2 at the front is almost a second a lap, consistently faster than everybody else. There is Webber, having made that early-ish stop. 55 still to go here. Alonso and Raikkonen glued together on the racetrack at the front. Intense pressure battle at the front of the Canadian Grand Prix. Last year's winner, Kimi Raikkonen, is second at the moment, breathing down the neck of race leader Fernando Alonso, who's attempting to win his 4th race in a row from pole position, which would be quite an achievement if he could pull it off. This is Renault's bogey circuit, though. They've already had a drive-through penalty for Giancarlo Fisichella, who started alongside Alonso on the front row of the grid, but he was adjudged to have jumped the start, and he clearly did. So that drive-through penalty has dropped him down into 5th place. Michael Schumacher is still tucked up behind Jarno Trulli, and we'll wait to see after the first round of pit stops how fast that Ferrari really is, because I have a feeling that the track is going to come towards that Ferrari a little bit as more rubber goes down this afternoon. Still a long way to go in this Grand Prix, 52 laps, and Schumacher can have a lot to say about the outcome. And also under threat is Jenson Button from Massa and Villeneuve. Felipe Massa has got past Jacques Villeneuve for 7th place, and that's going to be quite an interesting scrap as well in the points positions.
Well, Alonso turned the wick up to do his low 1:16, and Raikkonen's responded. So they've got something left in their pockets with engine revs and power, no doubt about it. Raikkonen now does a 1:16.3, gets the gap back to 1 second. Something I don't understand is Fisichella, he was sort of hanging on to the lead pack, did his drive-through penalty. Now he's come out, he's sort of hanging around about a second a lap off the lead pace, and behind Michael Schumacher. You think he'd have just steamed straight up to the back of Schumacher and Trulli, wouldn't you? But he didn't do that. In fact, he's now dropped into the 18s, Fisichella, so I would think the team will be a bit frustrated about that. They've signed him up for next year. I understand, or I believe that may well have happened as soon as Alonso declared he was leaving and heading off to McLaren, that they actually signed Fizzy a long time ago, but just chose to announce it this weekend. Who knows, but that's the story.
Still a subject of great speculation who'll be driving alongside him next year in the Renault team. Of course, Alonso moving across to McLaren in 2007. And, well, Flavio Briatore has been trying very, very hard to persuade Kimi Raikkonen to go and join him there. It would give Raikkonen a chance to be undisputed #1, really, in a team. If he goes to Ferrari, which is where most people believe he will go, he may end up having a season alongside Michael Schumacher, which I think those of us who are neutrals in the Formula One game would love to see that. Raikkonen and Michael Schumacher together at Ferrari. Now, we saw Rubens Barrichello retire from this race earlier. He's now live with Luis Goodman.
Rubens, some kind of engine problem?
Yeah, we have to wait and see, but it felt very tight, and I was losing a lot of places. And before I came in, I thought the wheels were going to lock, but I assume it was a problem with the engine, but I really went to wait to see.
But there's no point in just going around slowly under those circumstances.
No, because it was going to break anyway. It was just 1 second away. I mean, if we turn the car on now, we might find what the problem was.
You've had pretty good reliability this season so far, haven't you?
Yeah, very good actually, and I feel sorry for it because I think Honda did a tremendous job to make up for the problems, and we are finding more power and more reliability. So it's a one-off, a track that I like so much, and I'm off.
Thanks, Rubens.
Two extremely sensible things there Rubens was saying is if it's going to blow, you know it's going to blow when you're behind the wheel. There's no point in spilling oil all over the racetrack and smoke. Remember Sato created that huge accident in Monte Carlo when he just kept going until it blew itself to bits. And the other thing is, he's absolutely right. If I blow this to bits and all the bits and pieces lying on the racetrack, then the engineers can't fully establish what went wrong first. So you might as well bring it back in, and they've got a chance then to see what's just about to break instead of a pile of bits.
So Barrichello out of the race. Teammate Jenson Button is still in 6th place. Going to come under a little bit of pressure, possibly before too long, from Felipe Massa and Jacques Villeneuve. Button's pace, he's lapping in the low 1:18 at the moment, where the race leaders are lapping in the low 16s. So currently 2 seconds off the pace of the leaders, but he is down in 6th place, 12 seconds behind the car in front, which is Giancarlo Fisichella. So Honda's still got a lot of work to do on getting the race pace of this car sorted out.
I suspect Ralph's on a very long first stint. I'd be inclined to pull Coulthard in, I think, if I was running that programme. And they're 22 laps into the race. They might as well pull him in now, because behind him is Webber, who's catching. And also then Liuzzi in the Toro Rosso is, mind you, Ralph's slow off that corner. Can DC do anything about it? Ralph's got the line down into turn 1, so Coulthard will have to go the long way round. And Ralph's not really fighting that too hard, although DC's gone too deep now. So he's back in front, but there's saying Liuzzi's a further half minute behind them, so they'll only lose the 1 place. And I think the pace of the Toyota is really holding David Coulthard up. Raikkonen, a new fastest lap of the race on a 1:15.8. We've got an absolute duel going on at the front. It's tremendous, and they're now 23 seconds ahead of 3rd place man Jarno Trulli.
Here's Michael Schumacher, started 5th on the grid, dropped down to 7th in the opening corners when he was passed by Rosberg and Montoya, but then conveniently for him, they took each other out on the 2nd lap, and so he went back into 5th place. But the bad news for him is that he's been tucked up behind Jarno Trulli ever since then, and he cannot get past him. And now he's got Giancarlo Fisichella breathing all the way down his back of his neck. So a tremendous battle at the front between Alonso and Raikkonen for the lead, and an even closer battle really between these 3 drivers, Trulli, Schumacher and Fisichella, for the final place on the podium. Fisichella, of course, recovering from that drive-through penalty. A lot of anger going on, I would imagine, in that cockpit. Probably kicking himself a little bit because it was his own mistake.
If he can get close at the hairpin, he should have some almighty tow down the 1 kilometre back straight, because he'll have like a double effect. And Alonso then, the first man in the pits. Now we're going to see some fireworks from Kimi Raikkonen, who continues en route and takes the lead of the Grand Prix.
Yeah, McLaren in the lead here in Montreal. Last year's winner, Kimi Raikkonen. And here's the race leader, previous race leader.
Still very calm into his pit box though, James, not flustered at all. And it's really the most critical aspect of the pit stop timing, is getting the car stopped exactly on the mark, so that all the wheelmen on the guns and the fuel guys don't have to adjust their position. And it's just not worth taking that final half second and steaming into the box. But it's easy to say, but when you know you're in a straight fight with another very fast car and driver combination like Kimi Raikkonen, it's very easy to attack the pit box. But now Raikkonen needs some good sector times, because Alonso will be heavy with fuel.
He will. This is where Raikkonen can make the difference and get in front of Alonso by the time he makes his own 2nd stop. Ron Dennis there, the boss of McLaren, who joined us from the pit wall of the British Grand Prix with some very interesting insights. He's masterminding the tactics for Raikkonen. He's would very much like to win a race so far this season. McLaren yet to get on the top step of the podium. Well, you saw Alonso stationary there for just over 8 seconds. That's just over 56 kilos of fuel that went into his car. Good enough for 25 laps of this race. So he will stop once again towards around about that 48 or 49. And you need just under 160 kilos of fuel to complete the race distance here in Montreal. The engine does a lot of work. It's at full throttle for a long time. And here comes Schumacher, who's got a good draft on Trulli. And finally, Schumacher goes through.
What was Trulli doing? Gave up about 100 metres before the corner. Okay, Schumacher's clear then. Now he can get on with it, but he's 29 seconds behind anyway, which is effectively a pit stop. So he'll have to pull something out of the bag now. And there's Michael. Jarno goes up the inside, which is the only thing he can do. And Michael says, fine, I'll take the racing line then. And truly, it's very dirty up the inside there, but I have to say, that was a bit of a yield.
Well, they were lapping in the low 1:18 before that happened. Let's have keep an eye on the pace of Schumacher now that he's free. Ralf Schumacher there, his brother, seems to be going quite slowly. Obviously a problem there for the Toyota, currently running in 12th place as race leader Raikkonen dives past him and into the pit lane. Now, what has he been able to do? Has he been able to do enough to leapfrog Alonso?
Alonso's outlaps are pretty solid. He's a few tenths down in each, 2 or 3 tenths down in each sector, and he had about a 0.9 of a second advantage when the stops commenced. So this will be extremely tight. In fact, Alonso's going to take it, isn't it? Because something's. Oh no! The wheel is spinning up. Was that put on properly? Was that wheel on properly as he passes the other stricken McLaren of Montoya? That didn't look good, did it? No. Has he got a problem?
I'm not sure, but Trulli and Fisichella have pitted, so Michael Schumacher is up into second place. Ralf Schumacher's touring slowly, and here comes Alonso, an enormous speed differential there through the blind sequence of corners. The last thing you want to do coming around a blind bend is find a slow-moving Formula One car. Trulli pits, another long stop then for him. He drops down the order. He's gone down to about 9th place now. Alonso leading. Raikkonen is back out again. Michael Schumacher has yet to make a stop. Jenson Button has yet to make a stop. He is up into 4th place. And, well, that was pretty hairy for Alonso, wasn't it, coming across Ralf Schumacher. That is the top 8 then, after Raikkonen's first stop, with Schumacher yet to make his. Let's watch his pace, though. Michael Schumacher's now 16.7 that last lap. So that's the same sort of pace as the leaders can do.
Yeah, he's got that big deficit, unless he's one stopping, which would surprise me. Well, the right rear wheel is still on, and Ralf then is off the racetrack, having... what surprised me is he was cruising down the back straight. That's down at the hairpin. He was cruising down the back straight, but didn't pit and continued just to cruise around the racetrack. Louise has found Nico Rosberg.
Nico, was that an avoidable accident?
Yeah, it was, of course. I knew he was there, and I didn't want to lose the place. You know, I want to keep pushing, and my car was good on the brakes, so I decided to just brake late and stay on the outside and let him do whatever he wants on the inside, and then I'll be through in the next one again. But yeah, I never actually saw him, so all I felt was the touch on the rear, and that was it. Then actually two times, and that was it, and then that was it.
You've had a pretty controversial weekend one way and another, haven't you?
Yeah, in a way, yeah. But what really annoys me is it would have been great for the team, you know, to get some points today, and unfortunately didn't work out because we had quite a good car, I think, today. Also in the first lap of the race, it felt very good, and I really hope that Mark can do well.
Thanks, Nico.
Well, welcome to the club, son. Controversy is Formula One's middle name. Ralf Schumacher finally makes it back to the pits. We saw while Rosberg was talking there, Massa get in front of Jenson Button. That was a pass for position and for 4th place, in fact, which is where Massa finished here last year, driving a Sauber, a heroic drive by him at the Gilles Villeneuve circuit last year. And he seems to be putting something together here as well this year. They're a long way behind the leading 3, though, almost 20 seconds behind his teammate Michael Schumacher, currently running in 3rd place. Here's Raikkonen. How much did that stop cost him? That delayed stop, the right rear wheel seemed to have a problem getting it on. And, well, our own Louise Goodman took part in a pit stop at the British Grand Prix, and she felt the pressure of that, and it really is very easy to make a small mistake. And you can see that Raikkonen had set himself up very nicely to have a crack at Alonso, but he lost 3.5, maybe 4 seconds with that delay as Button pits. Like clockwork, out he goes. Just not enough pace in this car once again on race day for Jenson Button to figure really in the battle for the podiums. He goes back out on the racetrack, and he is now shown as being 11th. Well, Juan Montoya was the other half of that controversial accident with Nico Rosberg. He's talking now with Ted Kravitz.
Yeah, and Juan Pablo, you're really cross with Rosberg.
Yeah, you know, one thing, you know, is racing, one thing is racing hard. I don't mind. You know, if you want to touch wheels, I don't mind. But, you know, he missed the chicane when I should have had him. And he even like that, you know, kept racing hard. And it's okay. But, you know, I was in the inside of the corner. I was beside him and he just turned straight at me. And that corner, two cars don't fit. And I was on the inside. And I thought I should have been ahead of him. And he tried to maintain the position and we collided.
What about the incident with Michael the lap before?
No, it's first lap incident. We're racing hard. Same thing. I was on the inside, and Michael knew he didn't fit through there, so he went through the grass, and it was the smart thing to do for him.
Thanks, man.
Exactly as you were saying, Martin. It was fantastic though to see them that close together, wasn't it?
Yeah, good close racing, and it's interesting that Nico said I didn't see him there. I didn't realise he was there, which explains I think why he just carried on and turned in. I'm afraid. I still think, less so having seen it a few more times, but I still think, unfortunately, Nico will have to take the blame for that one as Michael Schumacher laps Ralf Schumacher, who's clearly got a problem. He's some 10 seconds per lap off the pace, and you wonder how much longer he'll persevere with that.
Well, we saw a pretty hairy moment a few laps ago where Alonso came through and almost collected Ralf Schumacher through the blind corners. It's one of the things about Montreal. There are a sequence of blind bends around the back of this circuit in the walls. Oh, Schumacher touching the wall there. He's pushing very, very hard, and that was not enough to put him out, but certainly enough to give him something to think about.
Well, the track is the same front and rear, so they must have both been grazing the wall there, but it was pretty square on. Michael might just get away with that, but he's now lapping faster than anybody else on the racetrack, desperately trying to regain some of those positions.
He's going a long way into this race, isn't he? This is lap 30, and he's yet to make his first stop this afternoon, so he was carrying a lot of fuel yesterday in qualifying. We thought perhaps it might be 5 laps more than Alonso, but he's already gone 6 laps further in this race than the world champion. And currently he's almost 10 seconds behind him, but he still has obviously a stop to make. But if he can one stop here this afternoon, and he can play himself into contention, I think.
Yeah, if Michael is one stopping, that's an unusual strategy, but he's brought himself right into play. Maybe not so much with Alonso, but he's actually quicker than Raikkonen at this stage of the Grand Prix. It will be a very long stop, you're right, and he'll have a pretty fat car when he comes back out. But looking, if he's had that kind of pace through the early stages, James, with that level of fuel on, then Michael Schumacher, as we half suspected on the grid, had a faster car than his grid slot maybe suggested.
Ralf Schumacher comes into the pits for the 3rd time then with that stricken Toyota. Not quite sure what the problem is, but it's certainly driving everyone crazy out there.
And it's
the second race, drive-through penalty it is, in fact.
Yeah.
Drive-through penalty for speeding in the pit lane for Ralf Schumacher. Just been flashed up on the computer screen here in the commentary box, so that's the reason why Ralf goes through again. So frustrating really for Michael Schumacher. Second race in succession, Martin. He's been held up. Now, if you remember at Silverstone, it was Raikkonen who was slower than him in the early stage of the Grand Prix. He couldn't really have a crack at Alonso. And here today, he's been held up by Jarno Trulli, has lost a lot of time, and it's really cost him the chance of having a run at Alonso. Let's get some more news.
Yeah, down to Toyota, James, and the team are as perplexed as Ralf. Ralf swears blind that it's the rear tyres that have just gone completely and he can't maintain control of the car. That's why they brought him in and changed the tyres, but now he says that the rear still feels funny, and he must have sped in the pit lane, that's why he's got the drive-through penalty. But, well, I mean, they're all at sea and he's well down, so I'd be amazed if he actually finishes this one.
Thanks for that, Ted. 39 laps to go then as the race leader crosses the line, and we ride on board with the singer-songwriter everyone's talking about at the moment, Jacques Villeneuve, who's just releasing his first single called Would You Accept. We heard a little bit of it at the beginning of the show, and well, tomorrow at his restaurant here in Montreal he's releasing 5,000 copies of that.
Target 17.0, you're doing good.
Yeah. Merci beaucoup, says Jacques Villeneuve to his race engineer.
I thought he was going to sing for us for a moment, but Jacques turned from being a nightmare driver for the media, he's turned into one of the best guys out there. He's such a pleasure to work with, and he's so eloquent in the things that he tells us. And Jacques, I think, very much in a happy stage of his life and driving extremely well this year.
Yes, of course, he got married just recently to his girlfriend Johanna, and he's in a good place, as you say. He's made this album that he recorded last November, when he wasn't quite sure whether he was going to keep his drive in Formula One with the BMW Sauber team. He went into a recording studio with a load of mates, laid down some tracks, and well, the results will be out shortly. As I say, the first single released tomorrow. And it's quite funny, Michael Schumacher now, who's about to make a pit stop, was asked about it yesterday, and he said, yes, he's good at singing, perhaps he should stick to that, because he's better at it than he is at driving a Formula One car. And you can see the niggle that stretches back to the late 1990s between these two still goes on.
I wonder why they fueled that. If they are stopping twice, why they fueled it so long? Because it compromised him on the grid, didn't it? And it's wrecked his afternoon, really. He lost best part of the thick end of half a minute behind Jarno Trulli.
Yeah,
that's not a particularly long fuel, so he will be in again. And it looks like he'll get down there back in front of Trulli again, so that's quite critical for him. But that's a strange tactic and strategy.
Yeah, well, they were struggling with the harder tyre. Obviously, they felt that they could marry a strategy which meant that the harder tyre would have a bit of chance to do its work. Anyway, critically for Michael Schumacher, he has rejoined in front of Jarno Trulli, and that is important. So Alonso leading this race from Raikkonen, and we've got 38 to go, approaching the halfway stage in Montreal. We're at the halfway stage of the Canadian Grand Prix in Montreal, what is a really rich period of top quality sport here on ITV1. After this, you can watch Portugal versus Holland in the World Cup last 16 game at 8 o'clock. The winner of that game, of course, will play England, who won today 1-0, the David Beckham free kick against Ecuador. So that's the quarter-final game against England, the winner of Portugal-Holland, later on, straight after this race here on ITV1. We're riding on board with the race leader, Fernando Alonso. He's just over 7 seconds ahead of his arch-enemy and rival, Kimi Raikkonen, who lost time due to a problem in the McLaren team with the pit stop. There was a delay on getting his right rear corner tyre on, and that's lost him probably 4 or 5 seconds, and that's dropped him right back. Alonso is able to manage this margin now. Up to that point, it was a really high-pressure encounter between these two, with Raikkonen really breathing down Alonso's neck for a lot of it. Michael Schumacher has managed to clear the cars that were holding him up in the first stint. He is now the fastest man on the racetrack in the Ferrari in the mid to high 1:16s, trying desperately to do something about the 28-second gap that he has to Fernando Alonso, and that gap was really made by getting stuck behind Jarno Trulli for the opening stint of the race. But for that, I think Schumacher would have been right there this afternoon with Alonso on pace. Ted Kravitz, what do you got for us?
The weekend doesn't get any better for Honda, James. Jenson Button dropped down to 9th, was jumped by both BMWs with Villeneuve and Heidfeld. And as I say that, actually Ferrari come out for Felipe Massa. So that's a symmetrical one stop for Felipe Massa, which means that his qualifying wasn't half bad, was it?
It was pretty tidy. 10th on the grid then for Felipe Massa. Parlays that into a pit stop on lap 37 of this race. He's gone further than anybody else in the opening stint.
Yeah, solid drive from him. Button struggling on pace, back in the 119s now. And as you say, Ted, falling down the field. But I tell you what, Kimi Raikkonen cannot relax at all. He's actually quite slow in this phase of the Grand Prix. He's in P2. Michael's 19 seconds behind him, but the kind of pace Schumacher's putting on, he'll be easily up to Raikkonen before the end of the Grand Prix. So Raikkonen really struggling. They all come out of the pit lane, don't they, and understeer horribly at that final little right-hander there to get back onto the track. They look like they're going to suspended animation there. Massa underway then. He's on a one-stopper, so he should have a pocket full of points if he's lucky enough to finish the race.
I was standing down there just behind the fence on the outside of turn 2 there, watching yesterday morning in free practice, and there's quite a build-up of those bits of dust and little bits of rubber that come off the tyres, what they call marbles. I think that's part of the problem, is that the drivers come out of the pit lane into those marbles. And remember last year, Montoya, after his first stop, he understeered straight off the road, went up onto the grass and almost hit the wall coming out of his pit stop.
Something that was going through my mind, we only caught the end of the Raikkonen thing, was whether or not they actually ever got the old tyre off in that pit stop. And we're getting news from the pit lane, from the F1 ITV pit crew, that he didn't. So Raikkonen's now out there on a right rear that's gone some
pit stop. Then he's doing an amazing job and closing down now on Fernando Alonso. He's got the gap down to under 8 seconds. His last lap, a 1:16.6, a full second faster than Alonso on lap 38. And, well, when he won this race here last year, Martin, if you remember, he was carrying a steering imbalance. The whole car wanted to turn left all the time, and Schumacher was catching him in the closing stages of the race, and it was amazing that Raikkonen was able to finish the race at all. So another heroic performance here from Kimi Raikkonen.
Not fresh information from down there in the pit lane is actually they did change the right rear. They were trying to do something else in that area of the car. So not absolutely clear what was going on, but it certainly compromised that phase of the race. But as you say, James, suddenly he has now found some pace.
Apologies for the confusion then, if the information coming up from the pits seems a bit mixed. Anyway, well, either way, whatever kind of right rear tyre Raikkonen is carrying, he's the quickest man out there at the moment. Michael Schumacher's had a slow lap in traffic, and he has now dropped back to just over 30 seconds behind the race leader. Alonso then bidding to overcome Renault's jinx at this circuit. On both of the last two races here, in 2004 and 2005, they've been front runners, but on both occasions both cars have retired. Here this afternoon, his teammate Fisichella is running in a solid but unspectacular fourth place, 11 seconds behind Schumacher, but comfortably in front of the Toyota of Jarno Trulli, whose pace has not really improved on a new set of tyres in the middle part of the race. He's still lapping in the low 118s, as he was in the early phase of the race when he was keeping Michael Schumacher behind him. He's fifth then, Massa is sixth, Villeneuve is running in seventh place, and Heidfeld, his teammate, in eighth. So two BMWs in the points at the moment, as Schumacher has another moment down at the chicane. That's the third incident he's had here this afternoon.
It's the third one we've seen. So quite how many he's actually had while we've been watching other cars. So Michael Schumacher getting very late onto the brakes down in the final turn, and recognises if there's no penalty, then why not? You might as well just steam through there. But ultimately, I don't think that actually finds you any lap time. For example, that was a 1:17.0. He has been doing 16.7s because he's too slow down the pit straight itself. Alonso then with an 8-second lead at the moment over Kimi Raikkonen. He's just responding to whatever Raikkonen puts in.
Well, he had to respond pretty quickly to the steering there as well. A great deal of handwork going on the steering wheel. Let's ride with him then and enjoy this blast around the back of the Canadian circuit. 19,000 RPM.
Raikkonen is stopping on lap 56, lap 56. We want to use our revs up before then. It's important now.
Use our revs up. He'll be allocated a certain number of revs or laps at higher revs, and he wants to maintain the cushion. So they're obviously still concerned about Raikkonen's ultimate potential to do damage to their Grand Prix victory here. So that's interesting, isn't it? They're not ready to... It looks to me it's rather more comfortable than that for Renault.
Yeah, that was Rod Nelson, the race engineer of Fernando Alonso. We've heard him a few times coming over the radio this season. It sounded like he had the cigars out, but he sounded a bit more under pressure there, didn't he? And look at this. This is what I saw before. Watch the steering wheel. Big correction there for Alonso. Under braking for turn one, pulling it down from about 180 miles an hour to just under 100 miles an hour for the first part of that corner. So, well, I hope there's nothing going wrong with the braking on Alonso's car. As I said before, it's a big ask for the brakes this racetrack, with a lot of very, very big stops. Give you an idea of the kind of energy involved in it. You're talking about something like 85 kilograms of pressure that the drivers have to apply onto the brake pedal for a corner like this hairpin here. Now, a lot of these drivers don't even weigh 85 kilos, so that is a phenomenal amount of pressure to put onto the pedal, and that's just to get the car to stop. It takes about 150 meters to get a car to go from 205 miles an hour here just to 75 for this final chicane, and 4G of frontal force on the driver, so 4 times his own body weight, pushing him against the seat belts, pushing his hands against the steering wheel and his feet against the dead pedal, throwing all his innards forward as he hits the brakes for that corner.
They do have the leverage of the brake pedal, of course, but something that Pat Simmons said to me on the grid was very interesting. He said it's different this year with this new qualifying system. If you get through to the top 10, we've gone off and done another 15 laps or something to get the fuel credits. putting the brakes under ever more pressure than we're used to here. They can't. They then go straight into Parc Fermé, so they're not able to change those brakes. So something the team's a little bit nervous about. Ted has some further news.
Yeah, we didn't see it on the cameras, Martin, but Fisichella made a major mistake 2 laps ago. He did an 18.7, and now he's just managed to get back into the zone that he was in, which is a 17.4. But he needs to be getting that job done, needs to be going into the low 17s, because he's up against Felipe Massa on that one stop. Massa may well jump him at Fisichella's second stop.
Passionate Canadian fans getting behind their man Jacques Villeneuve, standing up, cheering him on, waving their hands. They love him here, through thick or thin, it doesn't matter. He's come up here as a world champion. He's come here as a big loser in various years, and it doesn't seem to matter to them at all. They turn out a capacity crowd every single year. It really is a credit to the city of Montreal and the state of Quebec. Alonso then on lap 43, leading by 8 seconds from Raikkonen, but clearly not feeling comfortable with 28 laps to go. Back in Montreal, 25 laps to go here in the Canadian Grand Prix. This Ile de Notre Dame circuit, 2.7 miles long. Most of the year is a parkland. People are here walking their dogs, pushing buggies along with babies, riding their mountain bikes.
Radio check this lap. You need a balance change. No balance change.
Don't go twiddling with my front wings when I come into the pits is basically the story there. Does he want a balance change in terms of the front wing downforce, I'd imagine, rather than the tyre pressures as such? And truly they're saying, no, I'm happy with the car, don't do anything to it, just give me some fresh tyres and a refuel and I'll be on my way again. We're seeing a lot of inconsistency out there now. Michael Schumacher has run extremely wide down at the hairpin. There is just a mass of discarded rubber from these extremely soft tyres they're using in 2006. And as soon as the drivers are running slightly offline, they're just getting onto what looks like and feels like ball bearings, and off they go. And Raikkonen getting exactly that, and so close to T-boning one of the Toro Rossos. The drivers are beginning to struggle, a fraction offline, and they're just on the marbles.
Yes, we've seen Alonso make several corrections. He's missed the apex of the final chicane and just basically straight lined it a couple of times. So has Michael Schumacher. There you saw Raikkonen having problems as well. It's going to be pretty treacherous, you know, in the final 24 laps of this race. And they've also got to worry about the brakes. They can change the brake balance from the front to the rear to try and help that situation along as well. Although we have very high temperatures here on the brake discs, as you can see, that's what Martin's talking about, these little marbles, almost like gravel on the outside of that hairpin. And once you get onto that, it's like sitting on ball bearings. The car just goes straight on, as we saw with Raikkonen a moment ago and Michael Schumacher before that. So difficult times for these Grand Prix drivers. Alonso is leading. Raikkonen, after that problem at turn 1, has lost 3 seconds to him, so he's now 12 seconds behind the world champion. Michael Schumacher half a minute behind in 3rd place. Fisichella, after a drive-through penalty for jumping the start, is in 4th. Trulli is 5th. Massa is 6th. And a danger man for quite a lot of the guys in front of him, I think, because he's having a very strong afternoon. Jacques Villeneuve doing a super job. Here he is in 7th place for BMW Sauber, and Nick Heidfeld in 8th place. Whoa, who was that sailing past? Oh, it's the race leader.
Clearly wasn't full position yet. Jack yielding very easily there, but he's looking for a few points again. They came off a great result in Silverstone, both cars in the points. But Alonso absolutely flying past him there, wasn't it? Astonishing. Lap 48 we're on. Raikkonen's now 12.2 seconds behind Alonso after that error. Michael Schumacher further, best part of half a minute down the road now. And Fisichella's come alive. He's just done his fastest lap of the race. So clearly, James, online, there's good grip. But a half a metre offline and you're heading towards the boonies.
Yeah, so that's Fisichella's fastest lap of the race on a 16.7, which is almost a second slower than the overall fastest lap of the race, Kimi Raikkonen, in the 15.8. So the early part of this Grand Prix, there was probably more speed available to the cars. It's become more treacherous and more difficult as the race has gone on, and that's bad news for Michael Schumacher, who was hoping that the track would come to him in the Ferrari. This is Jacques Villeneuve now, crawling all over the back of Felipe Massa in the second Ferrari. Let's enjoy this with Jacques.
You can see Alonso's just scarping at the front. He's gone. That's the race leading pace. But this is all about 6th and 7th. And Massa's looking good if he is one stopping. He could surprise a lot of people at the end of this Grand Prix. Villeneuve just ahead of Heidfeld then. Button remains P9 and out of the points. And not that far behind Button is Klein in 10th. And Coulthard, who's also one stopping, cruising nicely up to the back of the point scoring position. So quietly doing a solid job this afternoon is Coulthard.
He certainly is. He's closing in on Jenson Button, his fellow countryman, who's currently in 9th place. Honda don't seem to have the pace here this weekend. And that'll be a concern for Shuei Nakamoto, who's taken over as the top technical man in the Honda team. He's a former motorcycle guy. He's been affiliated to the Formula One team for a while, but Jeffrey Willis, the technical director, has been basically had a man put above him. And at the moment, we're not sure whether we're going to see Jeff Willis again ever in a Honda shirt. He's reflecting on his future. I don't know if he's even watching this Grand Prix back home with us on ITV with his wife Francesca, but if you are, Jeff, keep your chin up, mate.
Alonso still pounding the 16.8s in now. Ralph's got to let him go. That's the only sensible thing to do. Ralph's not in this Grand Prix. He's 15th and struggling. So quite quickly, and no doubt with the help of a radio call, getting out of the way of Jarno Trulli's teammate, recovering to the track. As I said, the pit lane feeds you unusually into the exit of turn 2 here. Nowhere else in the world do we get that kind of strange layout.
So Heidfeld behind teammate Jacques Villeneuve once again. It's been such a strong season for Villeneuve. Heidfeld, who did a fantastic job last year, and Villeneuve this year has really been putting him in the shade recently. And Heidfeld behind him on the racetrack, but definitely advantage Villeneuve at the moment as Renault get ready to welcome one of their cars. First time round it was Alonso who was the first to pit of the two Renaults, and here it is he again, the race leader, for his second and final stop here this afternoon. He needs another nice calm one here. Let's see how the Renault boys go to work.
Some drama going on out on the track. Clearly the yellows are out, although that sign has now gone away at the top of your screen from showing yellow. It's Ralf Schumacher apparently was off the road again, and can Fernando get down there before that traffic? Yes, he certainly can, so that worked out quite nicely for him. A good, clean, calm stop again for the Renault boys.
He's got a huge margin over Michael Schumacher, half a minute, so he's comfortable there. Schumacher's pace at this stage of the Grand Prix a little bit erratic. That last lap a mid 117. He's not, in fact, he's just gone through again in a low 118, so pace dropping off a little bit for Schumacher.
Okay, what's going here? It's Ralf Schumacher. He's already complained he's got no rear grip at the back of that Toyota, and he wasn't really on the marbles, it just spun on him. Strange.
Down in 15th place, Ralf Schumacher. There is the sole remaining McLaren here this afternoon. Oh, slow, and look how difficult it is. That's more like Speedway than Formula One. Back end out. Poor old Raikkonen. I bet he feels he's back on a Finnish fjord, trying to get some grip from his rear tyres on the ice.
Well, there'll not be too much overtaking going on down there. It's very much, there's barely a car width now, is there, of space. And Raikkonen, see, the trouble is you pick up that rubber, and the next few corners you're going to be struggling. So that's Raikkonen ahead of Alonso, who stopped twice. So they're a stop apart now, and just 1.8 seconds in it. Raikkonen under a lot of pressure. Alonso must be feeling extremely comfortable at this stage. Here we go again. Heavy brake. They brake from about 80 metres, 180 miles an hour, 80 metres before the corner, and he's just gone a little bit wide onto what, as you say, feels like gravel.
So that's worked out very nicely for Fernando Alonso, who was certainly feeling the pressure earlier on in this race from Kimi Raikkonen, but a combination of a slow pit stop for Raikkonen, some question about the state of the right rear tyre of that McLaren, and one or two excursions has meant that Raikkonen has lost enough time that he's that far in front of Alonso, but he's got one more stop to make than the Renault drivers. So looking pretty good for Fernando Alonso. Now, I mentioned that brakes were a big issue here in Montreal. Ted Kravitz can tell us about it.
Yeah, and that's undoubtedly what's happening. Also, as well as the marbles and the no grip offline, Martin and James, what's happening is that the brakes are now starting to near the end of their natural lives. When Fernando Alonso came in for his stop, the front wheels were absolutely black, caked in carbon brake dust. So they put a nice new set on, but all of these guys are going to have to nurse their brakes through the final stint.
There's Fisichella having problems as well. It's becoming a bit of an endurance trial, this one. Well, Martin was making the point earlier on that last year with single lap qualifying, the cars would only do a handful of laps on a Saturday afternoon before going into Parc Ferme. An out lap, a fast lap and an in lap. This year they had to do, for example, 23 laps, Alonso did yesterday afternoon, on top of a race distance of 70. So these brake discs are having to do 103 laps of this Montreal circuit. That's a big ask.
Fisichella pits. He was beginning to catch Michael Schumacher, just 11 seconds behind him. So Schumacher third, Fisichella fourth. He's in for his, they're showing 3 stops. Of course, he had a drive-through for jumping the start early on in the Grand Prix. And now he's in for his second formal pre-arranged pit stop.
He can only speculate on where he might have finished this afternoon without the drive-through. He qualified on the front row of the grid alongside his teammate Alonso for only the second time this season. As Flavio Briatore has said on many occasions, it's great when he does this, but we need him to do it on every single Grand Prix weekend. And since his drive-through, Fisichella unfortunately has dropped off a little bit. Here is Kimi Raikkonen, who was your race leader briefly after the second stop of Alonso. He comes in now to the McLaren box. Let's hope they get that right rear tyre off properly.
He's got 27 seconds over Michael Schumacher.
Oh, the engine stopped! Martin, the engine stopped! Oh no! McLaren again! A problem. What is it, Ted?
It must be the clutch, because they finished fueling. The guy's just giving him a shove to make sure he gets out. But that's either clutch or electronic, because he was just about to give the engine some revs, as they do, as they know when the fueling is finished. They put the throttle down and give it some revs, but it just went deathly quiet. The engine stopped and he stalled. So electronics or clutch there, but he's away now.
Well, he's in a Schumacher sandwich at the moment. Ralph gets out of the way. Why is he dragging that Toyota around when he's got so many problems? But Michael Schumacher critically is behind Kimi Raikkonen, and we're pretty sure Michael's got a pit again, so it may not have cost him anything actually. But let's wait and see who might damage that situation. Well, let's keep an eye on Felipe Massa. He is one stopping, we know that. It'll be interesting to see where he is in all of this.
Yeah, it certainly will. That was very sharp work by the McLaren mechanics to get that engine started again for Kimi Raikkonen. I wonder why it stopped. Did he stall it, or did something else happen? But they just have these niggly little problems, don't they, that seem to hold them back from time to time, the McLaren team. They're such a wonderful organisation. They build great racing cars. They've got such strength and depth in every department. Yet at the racetrack, we saw it last year quite a few times, that as a team, they do just make a few little mistakes, and it ultimately costs them, particularly when they're up against a foe like Alonso in the Renault. Seemingly makes everything happen for him and hardly ever makes a mistake.
Now, will these two be teammates next year? We think Raikkonen's going to Ferrari. Will Michael Schumacher stay at Ferrari? Well, that would be something to watch, wouldn't it? Let's hope that happens. If I was Michael, if we're right and Kimi's going there, if I was Michael, I'd stay on and see how far I get. I mean, his work rate will be massive, much higher than Kimi's. He knows the team very intimately and exactly who does what around there, and I just fancy Michael might look okay against Kimi Raikkonen. I'd love to see that happen.
So would I. 16 laps to go here in the Canadian Grand Prix. The world champion Fernando Alonso bidding to win his 4th race in a row from pole position. He's had to sweat for it in the early stages. Does he have to sweat anymore as Villeneuve, I beg your pardon, Heidfeld comes in the BMW Sauber for his second stop of the afternoon from 7th place. Into the closing stages of the Canadian Grand Prix. 7 times winner of this race, Michael Schumacher, pits from 3rd place and having a battle with Kimi Raikkonen, who's currently 2nd. Fernando Alonso had some real pressure from Raikkonen earlier in the race, but he's now comfortably ahead after some problems for Raikkonen in both of his pit stops, and a little off-track excursion as well. Lost him about 25 seconds in total. Schumacher will come back out on track and feed in. Where will he feed in? Just alongside some Toro Rossos. It's lap traffic. So Felipe Massa, his teammate, is certainly a factor in this race, as is Giancarlo Fisichella, currently running in 4th place. There you can see the top 8 at the moment. Both of the BMWs are there. And interestingly, Nick Heidfeld has jumped his teammate Jacques Villeneuve in that final round of pit stops. So Villeneuve will be pretty peeved about that. Reminder for you that you can see Portugal versus Holland straight after this in the World Cup, and the winner of that game, of course, will play England in the quarter-finals of that competition. We're riding on board with the BMW of Nick Heidfeld, and well, Alonso at the front on the Michelin tyres, and if he can stay there, or indeed even if Raikkonen wins this race, then that will be Michelin's 100th Formula One victory, and that will be quite an emotional moment for them, particularly as they are withdrawing from Formula One at the end of this season. And it was announced this weekend that they have not put in a tender to be the single tyre supplier in Formula One when the whole sport reinvents itself in 2008. So unfortunately, we've only got nine more races with Michelin's company in Formula One. A great company, they've done a lot for the sport, and if they can hold on here, they'll get their 100th Grand Prix victory.
No real changes at the front then. Alonso from Raikkonen, Michael Schumacher now 18 seconds adrift of Raikkonen in third place.
Beware the brake overheating, keep pushing.
Did he say there was one brake overheating, keep pushing or something? But they're obviously monitoring that on the telemetry back in the pits. Jacques being told to, if he's got brake problems, then ignore them. He's on for a World Championship point. He's clearly lost out somewhere against his teammate in the pit stops, and that truly remains sixth. Massa's one stop is actually not going to get him any further, it looks, than P5 at the moment, although he is catching Fisichella in fourth. We thought Coulthard was one stopping, and he was looking extremely strong to be in for a World Championship point, but he's done a late splash and dash. He's up to P11, just behind his teammate though, having started at the back of the grid. And the pair of the Red Bulls are chasing Jenson Button now very hard.
Oh my goodness me! A big accident for Jacques Villeneuve. Yeah. Well, we saw him hit the wall of champions in the build-up to the programme. He's hit the wall pretty hard there. It's not the same one, but he just went straight off the road. Everybody's been struggling with grip here this afternoon, and a safety car surely will have to be deployed here.
Well, that was the marbles, and I think he just got on the marbles from trying to pass Ralf Schumacher, who's coasting around in the Toyota, and I believe that Jacques just got on the marbles, and there's no way that can really be a technical problem on the exit of a corner like that.
Well, as I mentioned earlier on, there are walls around this racetrack that are ready to bite anybody who makes a mistake or goes offline. It's not like the modern circuits, and those, you can see the marbles as we're talking about them, little bits of rubber and dust that mix together. They're incredibly slippery, and they've caught just about every driver out here this afternoon in one way or another. Unfortunately for Villeneuve, he caught them at a place where there's a wall to hit, and hit it very hard he did.
Yeah, it was Ralf parked on the apex going slowly. Here we go, there's Ralf kind of trying to get out of the way, and Jacques looks just picked up the marbles and realises it, gets on the brakes, but nothing he can do. Straight to the scene of the accident, and he would have zero control. You're floating on the top of those little ball bearings effectively. But Alonso now will suddenly come immediately under pressure from Raikkonen and Michael Schumacher. They'll all be backed up. The top five truly in sixth is a lap down, so the top five will now all be line astern.
And don't be fooled, it was not a low-speed accident. Now you can see just the damage to the car, how much there was. 90 miles an hour Villeneuve was travelling at when he hit the wall there. So a big shock for Jacques Villeneuve. An even bigger shock, I think, for Fernando Alonso, who was comfortably looking at winning this race by something like half a minute. And now, instead, he's going to have 10 laps, or probably slightly less by the time the safety car pulls in, of Raikkonen and Schumacher breathing down his neck. Has he got the pace? Well, certainly. Judging by the way he's driven so far this weekend, you'd have to say what. But don't forget, this track is very, very treacherous at the moment. Marbles everywhere to ready to catch out the unwary, as we've just seen. And would you want to be having to drive absolutely flat out to resist Raikkonen and Michael Schumacher with traps everywhere around you?
The only saving grace for Alonso is I think he's got the lap sixth place man, Jarno Trulli, behind him. There's not for the first time this afternoon, I'm asking why Ralf Schumacher is still out on the racetrack, and I suspect Jacques Villeneuve will be asking the same question.
Yeah, he's been off, he's been in the pits, he's had a drive-through penalty, he's had it all really, Ralf Schumacher, everything except enough speed to be a contender. And well, it's one thing to be out there, it's another thing to catch out a driver like Villeneuve and take away points.
He has to let you through. Good, have to go on the dirty bit.
That is really, really unfortunate. Did you see just before he hit the wall? Look at the bits on the tyres. That's why he had no grip.
Yeah, I'd have been inclined to take my hands off the steering wheel with that one. That was a nasty accident. And the track is not really designed there for a car to go head first into the wall. It's an unusual incident, that. Not something definitely you wouldn't be calculating that one if you were working out where to put extra tyres and softer parts to hit.
Well, funnily enough, this was the race, the Canadian Grand Prix many years ago, where we first saw a safety car in Formula One, and in fact finished, I believe one of the races here actually finished under a safety car a few years ago after an accident in the closing laps. I don't think this one's going to finish under the safety car. I think hopefully we'll get a little bit of racing, and when we do, the good news for Alonso is that he has Jarno Trulli there, you can see, and Nick Heidfeld between himself and the danger man, Kimi Raikkonen. Yeah, it was 1999 when the race finished under a safety car following an accident to Heinz Harald Frentzen. But as I say, with 9 laps to go and only a modest amount of debris to clear up. So hopefully we'll get a good conclusion to this race in a few moments. We're back racing in Montreal. 7 laps to go to the conclusion of this Grand Prix. Finally, it seems Ralf Schumacher is going to retire from this race. I think Jacques Villeneuve will wish he'd retired a long time ago. He's been touring around slowly, and in trying to lap him, Villeneuve got on the marbles and hit the wall at turn 7, and that brought out the final safety car, which has just gone back in again. Alonso is leading this race from Kimi Raikkonen in 2nd place. 3rd is Michael Schumacher. 4th is Fisichella. 5th is Massa. 6th Trulli. 7th Heidfeld. And 8th, and on for a World Championship point after a very unpromising start to the afternoon, is Jenson Button. Although Christian Klien has been told by his team to attack Button because they believe he's vulnerable at the moment.
I just wonder if Ralph's preparing to drive the other way around the circuit now for the last few laps, but it's been a strange afternoon for him. Clearly the car has been a handful, to be fair to Ralph, but really don't understand why they've been persevering with that. But Alonso leads Raikkonen by 3.8 seconds. Michael Schumacher trying to find his way through the back markers. Blue flags will be waving. He's past Button then. Button's P8. And who's he got in front of him? That'll be Heidfeld in front of him. So that's the traffic has really stopped the chain of them getting hooked up behind the safety car.
Well, Ralph is definitely out of the car now, and Ted Kravitz is in the pits.
Yeah, and McLaren are absolutely apoplectic at Jarno Trulli. Trulli was just completely asleep on the restart. Alonso managed to hold them up as they were exiting the Casino chicane, and then Alonso just legged it. Trulli was doing absolutely nothing, and because Raikkonen couldn't pass him because they were still under a safety car procedure, that's completely ruined any chance Raikkonen had of overtaking Alonso anytime soon.
And how much did that cost Kimi Raikkonen? 5.5 seconds. And as Ted says, any chance of getting on terms with Alonso. So on this is bogey circuit. He's now just 6 laps away from getting the win. He's never stood on the podium of the Canadian or American Grand Prix, Fernando Alonso. And he came here this weekend saying, this is a wrong I have got to put right. And well, he's had a lot of pressure to soak up here this afternoon in the early stages from Kimi Raikkonen. He led from pole position early on. Fisichella was given a penalty, a drive-through penalty for jumping the start. We then had a safety car very early on after a collision involving Nico Rosberg and Juan Pablo Montoya as they battled over 5th place, and they made contact in one of the very narrow parts of the circuit. Rosberg hit the wall. Montoya retired not long after that, and after the safety car, Michael Schumacher was held up behind Jarno Trulli for a long time. The Toyota didn't have the pace that the Ferrari did, and that really put paid to any chance Schumacher had this afternoon of having a go at Fernando Alonso. But Raikkonen, well, he stayed with the Spaniard right the way until the first round of pit stops. But at both of his stops here this afternoon, Raikkonen had problems. First time round, he had a sticking rear wheel. Second time round, he stalled the engine, and the combination of which meant that he lost a lot of time to Fernando Alonso. And then finally, as I say, Villeneuve hit the wall whilst both BMWs in points-paying position. That's Coulthard and Klien having a little battle, and that's nerfed Klien out of 9th place. So a go-karting move there from David Coulthard.
Yeah, I don't know if was there actually contact, didn't see it, but it looked like clean. They looked like they both got in a bit hot, actually. I thought it was Coulthard that was going to disappear on the outside of the racetrack, but it was clean in the end. And then Scott Speed follows him through too, so an expensive corner for young Christian Klein. Alonso leads by 4.3 seconds. Michael Schumacher third, a further 3 seconds away. That puts Coulthard up into 9th from the back of the grid. He just he needs one more person now to drop out, and he's going to score a rather surprise point for him this afternoon. Fisichella's 4th, Massa 5th, Trulli 6th, Heidfeld 7th for BMW. Button clinging on to the final World Championship point.
Well, that would be something, wouldn't it, for Jenson Button. His teammate, Rubens Barrichello, has retired from this race. The first time this season that Barrichello's not made it to the finish line. And look how much pressure Button is coming under now from David Coulthard. He's caught him very quickly.
He has, hasn't he? DC's going to be having a sniff down into that final chicane or something. I don't know if he's got enough straight line speed. You're going to have to be a long way up the inside to be able to pass a driver in the hairpin here, because there's just one tiny line that's not covered in discarded tyre rubber. And Jenson then pulls further away. That's a good slipstream position though for Coulthard in the Red Bull, but I don't think he's got enough time to get the job done.
Well, he's got 3 laps to give it a try. They are lapping in the mid-119s, 2.5 seconds a lap slower than race leader Fernando Alonso. Michael Schumacher has a late burst of pace. He's lapping in the low 116s, but I think it's too little, too late really for him and Ferrari. This is they're going to have a rueful exit from this race, because they really came here. Alonso himself was saying that he thought Ferrari were favourites, and that this was a race Schumacher needed to beat Alonso in if he was going to mount any kind of challenge in the second half of the season.
Okay, mate, let's get Jenson. Let's have him.
That's just
simple as that.
Yeah. DC's saying, tell me something I don't know, but that's it's the new way. It's the new way on the radios of Formula One. We didn't used to have good enough transmission to have that sort of conversation, so you always kept communication down to an absolute minimum, so you didn't misunderstand something that was going on. But at the moment, he's not looking close enough to take it away from Jenson Button, that final World Championship point. Michael Schumacher is putting in a last gasp effort to try to get back on Kimi Raikkonen's terms. He's just 2.7 seconds adrift, and Coulthard's got a better run out of the hairpin. He's got the inside line too. Jenson can't sweep across now, and there's no point. He might as well just throw it in there, DC. You've got nothing to lose, and that's exactly what he does. Jenson then will have to be very slow on the exit, so beautifully done for Coulthard to take a point, and that was all about Jenson getting a little bit wild and ragged on the exit of the hairpin.
An absolutely textbook move from David Coulthard, and well, it's only about a single World Championship point, but they're taking it as seriously as if it was for a race victory, and what a wonderful move by David Coulthard in the Red Bull. Of course, a podium in Monaco a couple of races ago. His only other points finish was a single point in the Australian Grand Prix earlier in the season. So this will be his 3rd points finish of the season, and one of his most hard-fought. Remember, Coulthard started this race from the back of the grid after taking an engine penalty for having to change an engine. So an amazing recovery by David Coulthard, just showing what quality he still has at 35 and why Red Bull are so keen to retain him for next year.
Get a load of this though, James. Michael Schumacher 1:15.9. He's now just 1.8 seconds behind Kimi Raikkonen, but not enough laps to get the job done, is there?
Hang on, he's in front of him.
Where's Raikkonen?
Raikkonen's behind him. Michael Schumacher goes through in 2nd place, and Raikkonen is in 3rd place. He had a 1:20 lap. Schumacher had a 1:16 lap, so somewhere out the back. Let's see if we can see. Oh no, it's at the hairpin again.
Yeah, Raikkonen's got on the marbles, and Michael says, I'll have a bit of that, thank you, I'm off. So Raikkonen then back into 3rd place.
Well, previously here, the great hazard was the wall of champions. Now it seems it's the hairpin of champions that's catching people out, getting on the marbles, getting on the loose stuff, losing grip, and critically for Raikkonen, losing a place. That's important for Schumacher. It means that Alonso's only going to add 2 points to his 23-point margin over him. So in Indianapolis, if he can do something, and it might still give him a chance in the second half of the season. We've got a car stopped. This must be Takuma Sato, I believe, stopped in the wall. So the run down the straight for the final time. And this is to get the monkey off his and Renault's back. They've come here 2 years in a row they've been competitive. 2 years in a row they have retired. And for the first time, Fernando Alonso is not only going to step onto the podium here in Montreal, he's going to step onto the top of the podium. He has his 4th straight win from pole position. Fernando Alonso wins. 2nd, Michael Schumacher. 3rd, Kimi Raikkonen. 4th is going to be Giancarlo Fisichella. And David Coulthard is going to get that final point. There he goes across the line. Button goes across a enormously disappointed 9th, I'm sure, with Scott Speed breathing down his neck in the Toro Rosso. Just 0.4 of a second behind at the end. Now, what an eventful Canadian Grand Prix. 2 safety car periods. And this man once again had to soak up a fair bit of pressure, but really, he always had an answer, didn't he, Martin?
He did, he had it under control, although Michael Schumacher was pacey at certain points of the race, and you have to say, had he not have been held up by Jarno Trulli early on, Michael Schumacher would have been a major factor in this Grand Prix. And you've still got to question that sort of odd qualifying 2-stop but a very long first stint that ended up putting behind them.
Lovely one, mate. Abbiamo vinto anche qua, bravissimo. Molto bravo.
He had all the bases.
He went a little bit wide, Michael got past him.
What happened to Raikkonen, he says. Exactly.
Well, indeed. What indeed? Well, a lot happened to Raikkonen. Problems in the pit stops and then problems on the racetrack as well. This is Tonio Liuzzi, just looking at in a slow-mo. And that's Sato hitting the wall in the background, so that's why he was parked up there.
We used to hit the wall a lot out there, but I sort of stopped doing that. But it's unusual to see a Formula 1 car in there this last sort of few years, but it used to be a place where we often ran wide into the wall.
Well, if you're as passionate about Formula 1 as Martin and I and the rest of the F1 ITV team, then make your voice heard. There's another FIA AMD spectator survey taking place. We need to hear your views on Formula 1, what you think of the cars, the rules, the racing at the moment, and the general show. Log on to www.fia.com and make your voice heard. Here in Canada, the Canadian Grand Prix has been won by Fernando Alonso ahead of Michael Schumacher and Kimi Raikkonen. My driver of the day is David Coulthard from the back of the grid after an engine change, finishing in 8th place. But it's not about me, it's about you. Who's your driver of the day?
It's about both of us. Yeah, Coulthard did a spectacular job, and I love those overtakes. But I don't know. I think for me today, the man who did a great job was Michael Schumacher in the Ferrari, and I think the pace he had and the way he handled certain situations, I'll probably give it equally, actually. Michael Schumacher, David Coulthard, the 2 oldest guys on the grid. Now, maybe that's interesting. On a tricky track like this, experience paid off, didn't it? But certainly I thoroughly enjoyed those overtakes from DC.
We all did. This is the corner that caught them all out. This is where the marbles were. And there is Raikkonen losing that 2nd place to Michael Schumacher, critically right at the very end of this Grand Prix. Well, it's been a thrilling afternoon and another dominant win for Fernando Alonso here in Montreal.
Alonso, first podium in Canada, first Canadian Grand Prix victory. Alonso from Schumacher and Raikkonen. Our coverage at the moment is also live on ITV4. And all the reaction to the race, that will take place live on ITV4 next, because ITV1, that's heading back to the World Cup. The Portugal-Holland match, the winners play England in the quarter-finals. You will get all the news in our ITV1 highlights a little bit later, our Grand Prix highlights, but it's football next on ITV1, where we'll be getting all the live reaction, all the podium celebrations from this Canadian Grand Prix in a couple of minutes' time on ITV4.
Alonso celebrates, and well he might. His first win in Canada, his 4th straight victory from pole position. Another ludicrous celebration, and critically for him, 14th career victory, and that moves him now into clear 2nd place of the current drivers. He was level with David Coulthard going into this race on 13 wins. Now he's 1 ahead. He's the 2nd most successful driver in Formula 1 currently, after Michael Schumacher. And it's also Michelin's 100th Grand Prix victory. And the Michelin man himself is there to celebrate. Well, there's lots of bits of Michelin tyres and Bridgestone tyres scattered around the outside of the racetrack. And that provided a heck of a hazard for everybody this afternoon, wasn't it? To use a golfing metaphor, it's like the sand traps at the Open, really, isn't it?
Yes, they've just been going softer and softer on the construction, and particularly the compound. And that's... their tyres apparently that are even softer than the qualifiers we used to have that were good for about 5 miles. Now they're doing 200 miles in a race with 3 sets of them, so sort of 60, 70 miles a set. But they're just peeling off. The surface of the tyres just being discarded. The grip that the cars have just means that the surface of the tyre has gone away, and obviously it just gets discarded slightly off the racing line and just starts edging its way back onto the racing line. And this man, Kimi Raikkonen, very much found that out to his cost. They'll be suitably unhappy with that. He should have had P2 today.
Yeah, he'll be gutted, won't he? I think his face says it all. Look at the body language between him and Alonso.
There was a point towards the end of the first stint where McLaren must have thought they got this race under control. Ron was looking very comfortable up there on the pit wall, and it all fell apart, really from that dodgy right rear wheel problem.
Yeah, first pit stop was the problem for Raikkonen. The second one was also a big problem. And then the marbles turned out to be an even bigger problem at the end, losing him that place to Schumacher. First time he stood up there, he celebrates Michelin's 100th, a handshake from Michael Schumacher. And scarily, I was talking, Martin, to Bob Bell, the technical director of the Renault team, and he said we haven't seen the best of Fernando Alonso. He says he'll mature over the next few years, and he's nowhere near his peak yet as a Grand Prix driver.
The point that impressed me most about him today was at the end of the first stint, when it did appear Raikkonen had got the better package underneath him. Fernando still just calmly came in the pit lane and got the job done, knowing that there's a long afternoon ahead. He certainly has got the head to go with the speed.
Steve Nielsen there, the team manager of Renault, one of the key men behind the scenes. Flavio Briatore sharing out the honour of going up onto the podium this year. Flavio yet to decide his own future. He says he's got a meeting with the boss of Renault middle way through July, and that will decide whether he stays in Formula One as the head of Renault. And there's Michael Schumacher, yet another trophy to put in his cabinet. It's his 148th podium. Incredible, isn't it? And a rueful Raikkonen does not look very happy after his afternoon's work. There we go then.
Exit stage left so they don't get all wet, the dignitaries, and sticky. And the champagne down there. Some Michelin people down there to grab a slice of the glory too this afternoon. And the big clean-up begins of getting all of that rubber off the Parkland race circuit.
It does indeed. Today was a day about not losing your marbles. This was a great Grand Prix, an eventful one, a treacherous race, won by a great champion.
And no one is showing greater composure at the moment in Formula One than the man on the top step of the podium, Fernando Alonso, once again winner of this